when you are finding fault with your spouse, you are not communicating with them. And when you are not communicating with them, how can you build a stronger and a happier marriage? Hello everyone, and welcome back to Transforming Marriages with Uju Onwuzulike. I am absolutely thrilled to be your host. Thank you for tuning in, and I want to let you know at the end of this video, you will be able to learn one or two things that will help you to build a stronger and happier marriage, all to the glory of God. So what will I be talking about in this video? What I'll be talking about is something that has caused a lot of marital damages, something that has destroyed a lot of marital homes. And what is that? Fault finding in marriages. So in today's video, I will let you know how fault finding will destroy your marriage, but above all, what you can do to break free from this surge. So before we get the show on the road, I want you to grab your pen and paper. Why would you want to be a fault finder in your marriage? Don't you know that being a fault finder will destroy the essence of your marriage? And I know you won't want to be in such a marriage. Fault finding is the habit of always focusing on the shortcomings, the mistakes, the inadequacies of your spouse, all in a bid to blame them, all in a bid to criticize them. Why would you be doing that in your marital home? Why would you be doing something that will destroy your marital home? How will it destroy your marital home? The first thing it will do is to create a toxic environment. And what do you find in a toxic environment? The first thing you will find in a toxic environment is negativity. You will find anxiety in a toxic environment. You also find stress. And you find emotional harm in a toxic environment. But the one that should be a call for concern for all of us is this feeling of unsafe when we are with our spouse. What can be worse than that? Being with your spouse and you are still feeling unsafe around them. That will happen because you are always finding fault with your spouse. And because you are always doing that, you've created a toxic environment. And I don't want you to do that. The next thing fault finding will do to your marriage is to destroy your marital harmony. Don't allow anyone to deceive you. You can never have peace in a marriage where your spouse is always finding fault with you. You can never have peace in such a marriage. And the next thing it does is to destroy the essence of marital communication. You cannot communicate with your spouse effectively when all you are doing is to always find fault with them. Communication is not just about speaking to your spouse or communicating to them. The way I want you to see communication in marriage is to see it as something you will do that will inspire your spouse to be better. Whenever you tell your spouse something and what you have said to them are not making them to be better, you have not communicated to them. And that is what I want you to stop doing. So when you are finding fault with your spouse, you are not communicating with them. And when you are not communicating with them, how can you build a stronger and a happier marriage? So I want you to stop finding fault with your spouse. The next thing it does in your marriage is to make everyone to be defensive. In other words, fault finding will create a culture of defensiveness. This means the husband will always be defending himself. The wife will always be defending himself. And this will be unending in your marriage. And the question to ask is this: why do you think a husband will always be defending himself? He will always be defending himself because he always feels offended with what the wife will say. And the same thing applies to the wife. She will always feel offended with what the husband is about to say. So the only way they will respond is to be defensive. And defensiveness in a marriage will always heighten the tension in the marriage. It will always heighten the disunity in the marriage. Why would you want to be doing something that will destroy your marriage? fault finding in your marriage is something that is not in your best interest. So in this video, I'm beseeching you to look at it again and ask yourself, what I have been doing in being a fault finder, has it been in my best interest? The answer would definitely be no. And that leads us to yet the most important part, the solution part. How do we break free from being a fault finder? To break free from being a fault finder, the first thing you have to do is to change your mindset. Because it all starts in the mind. And because it started in the mind, it solidifies and becomes a mindset. You can also undo it. How do you undo it? How do you change your mindset? When the urge to find fault with your spouse arises, what you're supposed to do is to pause and ask yourself, why do I want to find fault with my spouse? Why do I want to criticize them? Why do I want to focus on their shortcomings? Why do I want to make them feel bad? This is something you need to ask yourself. And when you ask yourself that, you end up discovering that the essence of all that you had wanted to do is just to make them feel bad, to make them feel inferior. And when that is your main goal of reprimanding them or finding fault with them, how can you build a successful home with that kind of mindset? So when next you have this urge to find fault with your spouse, ask yourself this question. And then when the answer is no, that you are not doing something great, that you will not build your family with that you will not get them to improve, and you will not get them to be better, that will enable you to refrain from finding fault with them. So the first thing I want you to do is to change your mindset and say to yourself, instead of focusing on finding fault with my spouse, instead of focusing on their shortcomings, why don't I focus on what they are getting right? And I want to assure you, there are so many things that they are getting right that we are failing to see. So change your mindset. That is the first thing you have to do. And then the second thing you have to do is to realize that fault finding is not the same thing as solution seeking. What you should be doing in your marriage is to jointly and always find solutions with your spouse. So what you have to do is to move away from fault findings to solution seeking. Because in every marriage, you have so many problems to solve. In every marriage, you have issues to contend with. And these issues require solutions. So what you need to do, your focus in your marriage is to always find solutions. And this is what husband and wife should be doing, to always find solutions together. And you cannot find these solutions together if you are always finding fault with your spouse. So you need to realize that finding fault can never amount to solution seeking. What you need in your marriage is to always seek for solution. And then the third thing you have to do is to be empathetic. And what does that mean? It simply means to always see things from your spouse's perspectives. When you begin to do that, you will see that it will become unnecessary to always find fault with them. Because a lot of times you will judge your spouse based on your own understanding, based on your own worldview, and based on your own perspectives. But it's very good as a married person to always consider the feeling of your spouse, to always consider their worldview and their perspective. When you start doing that, you'll see that you end up not finding fault with them again. And that leads us to the fourth thing that I want you to always do, and that is to seek for understanding. Always seek for understanding. A lot of couples are not doing this. And because they are not seeking for understanding, they are quick to blame their spouses. They are quick to find fault with their spouses. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an agreement with your spouse that no one will turn off the refrigerator in the kitchen. And then you come back home, you notice that the refrigerator has been turned off. The easiest thing to do is to start blaming your spouse or finding fault with them for doing that. But that is the wrong thing to do. You're doing that because you did not seek for understanding. But if you have sought for understanding and simply ask your wife or your husband, why did you switch off this refrigerator? They might tell you things like, oh, in the morning we had a power surge and we had to switch it off to safeguard the refrigerator. Imagine hearing this from your spouse. Do you think you will blame them again? Definitely, you will not blame them. But a lot of times you blame them, you find fault with them because you lack understanding. You didn't know why they did what they did. So I'm encouraging you in this video to refrain from finding fault with your spouse. It will only destroy the essence of your marriage. Till I see you next, keep supporting your spouses to be the best version of themselves and not the other way around. Enjoy the journey of your marriage.